time, the U.S., Great Britain, and France launched a coordinated attack on Syrian sites said to be involved in President Assad's chemical weapons program. We welcome now Representative John Garamendi, Democrat of California, who serves on the House Committee on Armed Services. Representative, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
In your capacity on the Armed Services Committee, what have you been briefed? What do you know about exactly what happened and whether it was effective?
Nothing. We've not had a briefing about the attack yet. It occurred Friday night here in Washington, D.C., and we're back to work today, although I'm unaware of any hearing that's taking place on this, and a briefing probably tomorrow, Tuesday, about what actually happened, all of the ins and outs of the military attack. What we do know is the lead up to it, and a hearing that we actually had about 16 hours ahead of the attack, in which there was no indication from the Secretary of Defense or the Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff that an attack was imminent, just less than a day beyond their moment before us at the Armed Services Committee hearing.
So, Congressman, from your experience, is this unusual? Is there an unusually small amount of information flowing from the White House given a military attack over the Middle East?
No, it's not unusual. In fact, it's probably the way it has to be. You don't want to tell everybody exactly what you're going to do. And in fact, President Trump has made quite a deal out of what he said. President Obama was always telegraphing his punches. Well, I guess in this case, President Trump tweets his punches, announcing just ahead of the attack that big, beautiful rockets were going to be coming into Syria. So he did telegraph his punches exactly where, when, and how. Clearly, Syria knew what was going to come. The places apparently were evacuated, there being no human casualties. All of that is just on the tactics that are involved here. But a much larger and far more important question is, who has the power to wage war? Does the president have the power to declare a war and actually undertake a what is called a kinetic, that is an actual bombing of a country without congressional approval? Well, apparently he does, although the Constitution doesn't say so. The Constitution is very clear. Congress has the only authority to declare a war, or in our case, authorize military force. However, we seem to have abandoned that. We've let the president have that power, and that is a path that I don't believe we ought to be going down at all.
So is Congress looking into ways of making Congress more involved in these decisions when it comes to authorizing the use of military power?
I don't know. Is it possible to get a serious injection of courage, of responsibility, of at least reading the Constitution and understanding that Article 1, Section 8 says Congress declares war. Article 2, Section 2 gives the president commander-in-chief, but nowhere says he has the power to launch an attack against any country on his own without congressional authority. Now, in 1973, Congress did authorize the War Powers Act, but that's defensive. That says the president can take action if there is an imminent threat or an actual attack on the United States. Principally, that was done for the purposes of nuclear warfare. But here we are with Congress abandoning it's one of its most important functions. And the men that wrote the constitutions were very, very clear when they said it's Congress. They wanted our country's representatives to say, okay, we're going to go to war or not.
Will the strikes make a difference in Iran's influence, in the Russian influence within Syria that in the long term could actually pose a threat for the United States?
Well, you raise a good point, and this speaks to what is also seriously missing in this entire attack on these chemical weapons facilities, and that is, where's the strategy? Is it just another one-off, once a year, sometime in April, we're going to launch a bunch of rockets into Syria? Or is there a strategy behind it? Keep in mind that there are a half a dozen countries involved. The United States has 2,000 troops in Syria, presumably going after ISIS. We have the Kurds as our allies in that work. We have Turkey, who is going after the Kurds. They're also having troops in Syria. We have Iran with perhaps several thousand Iranian military guards actually in Syria right now, and obviously we have Russia there. All of these all these countries are involved in wars in Syria. What is the strategy of the United States? What is our goal? What is our objective? None of that, not any of that, has been enunciated by this president. He promised a year ago that he would deliver a strategy for Iran and ISIS and Iraq. Never has that been forthcoming, and so we are operating with a president who is at best helter-skelter, who changes his mind every other moment, taking control here. There is no State Department. There are no ambassadors in those countries, and so we're operating in a very, very dangerous environment without the diplomatic people in place and without a strategy or even an objective beyond wiping out a few chemical plants along the way. That's not a strategy at all, and it creates a very dangerous situation in which nobody knows what the United States wants to accomplish.
Congressman, is the issue of congressional participation, the decision to go to war, to have kinetic activity as you describe it, is that a partisan issue? And by that I mean, are you hearing any sympathy from Republicans in Congress saying, you know what, even though I may have agreed with the strike, there should be a process by which we're consulted?
The word consultant, it's not appropriate in this case, but the answer to your question is yes. There are members of Congress on the Republican side that have spoken out very, very forcefully about the administration not seeking congressional authority, not consultation, authority to conduct a military campaign against a foreign government. And that's exactly what this was. This wasn't against ISIS, had nothing to do with ISIS. Quite the opposite. This was against the country of Syria. Now, you know, we can all say, good that this happened, that we did take action against these chemical weapons facilities. Certainly the use of chemical weapons is horrendous and should never occur. However, there is a much more, an additional, not necessarily more important, but a very critical thing here about the authority of a president that is at best inconsistent, having the authority to launch an attack against a foreign government. That's a big deal, and it's one in which Congress must take back its authority and hold tight the responsibility given to us in the Constitution.
Okay, many thanks, Congressman. Great to have you with us. That's Congressman John Garamendi of California.
Thank you.
Now, the U.S. is set to announce fresh sanctions against Russia related to Syria's reported use of chemical weapons against its citizens. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley